Se on jossain ihan vitun kaukana.
Siis mulla on... Mä käydään Aaltoon. Tai siis tää on... Mulla ei yhtään.
Tervetuloa Aalton yliopiston ylioppilaskunnan edustajien kokoontumiseen 4/2024.
Welcome to the AYYE meeting 424. It's the Wednesday 13th. It is 17:17. Opening the meeting. Closing item 1, moving on to item 2.
Ja läsnä olevien jäsenten ja varajäsenten toteaminen.
The sound quality is quite bad. We'll first have roll call by the secretary, Antti Ilmaverta. Once queried, please answer clearly, state your name.
Kiitos puheenjohtaja. Näin alkuun muutama tekninen asia. Olettehan kaikki varsinaiset edustajat hakeneet nuo laput?
Technical question, have you all gotten your voting slips? If not, then please fetch some voting slips.
Silloin aikaa kun loput...
Once everybody, when people are getting their voting slips, and information while we wait is that in the last time in the meeting, I mentioned that AYYE has a new tutor coordinator starting. I didn't have the names on the paper yet previously, so I didn't mention who it was, but now I can reveal. So, Hirkkamies, who is known to all of you. And the essential bit is that Ms. Oliver is a member of AYYE staff. They cannot be a member of the representative council at the same time. Conflict of interest. So moving to roll call. Roll call, just a list of names as per speaker.
Paikalla.
Lehtinen.
Täällä.
Kiitos. Jos en laskenut väärin, niin paikat täynnä. Kem Savola.
Paikalla.
Palo.
Paikalla.
Vuorela.
Paikalla.
Ja Kivivuori Mustalahden tilalla Jämerrattaan kautta. Paikalla. Kiitos. Kylterirengas. Linnikka keskifrontti. Kiitos. Tuomi.
Paikalla.
Palmqvist.
Paikalla.
Niemi Veisin.
Paikalla.
Niemi Toni.
Paikalla.
Kiitos. Ja niin hetkinen. Luja Mustalahti.
Ois vielä kyllä sen kanssa.
Palokhen poistui hetki, että katsotaan puheenjohtaja.
Ok. Palataan siis Kylterirenkaaseen. Ketä muita Kylterirenkaaseen?
Turning to Kylterirengas. Anybody else from Kylterirengas?
Yes. Thank you. No niin, sitten Luja Mustalahti, mutta oliko niin, että hänet on korvattu? Joo, eli Mustalahti ei ole paikalla. Kiitos. No niin, eihän hän pitänytkään olla, en osaa lukea omia muistiinpanoja.
He didn't need to be here, I just couldn't read my own notes.
Vallo, ei, taas väärät muistiinpanot. Täällä on 2 haraketta ja mä olen koko ajan väärä. Muita luovasta tai lujasta, ei ilmeisesti. Teiltä muita? Ei muita. Vihreä on Aalto Manninen. Liikamaa. Parkkinen. Pyhälammi. Vandermeer. Määttä. Kiitos. Ei muita. Ei muita. Vuokakorner. Keskinisula. Tack, tack. Någon annan? Puheenjohtaja läsnä 29 edustajasta.
29 members of the representative council present and accounted for, stating that we have 29 members of the RepCo present. Note from the crowd, which the interpreter cannot hear. We will also reserve the right to speak to all AYYE members of staff, orbs, and the interpretation. The financial director, executive director, and the financial real estate committee, of course, have a right to speak as well. Do we have any others who want to receive the right of residence or right to speak? Closing item 2, moving on to item 3. At this stage, in English.
Technical help for that yet, then please go speak to the hopes persons in the corner over there so we can get that arranged for you. So there is translations available over headphones if you need it. Jatketaanko kokouksen kohtaan?
Continuing to item 3, lawfulness and quorum of the meeting has been approved according to the regulations. We have lawfulness and quorum if in the meeting we have at least 25 members of the representative council present, with the chairperson or vice chair. I see that all of these requirements have been fulfilled and the agenda has been approved as the minutes for the meeting. The invitation to the meeting has been sent 7 days prior and been published on the university bulletin board of the representative council. The members must also receive their invitation 7 days prior in 3 languages: Finnish, English, and Swedish.
Ja kokouskutsu on lähetetty viime keskiviikkona. Nämä ehdot täyttyä, joten todetaan kokous laiseksi ja
So all of these are fulfilled, so we will have lawfulness and quorum. Choosing 2 vote counters and 2 scrutinizers of the minutes. We will next choose these individuals. We will have the vote counters and scrutinizers stand in as deputies for one another, as is the approved custom. Previous meeting, we took a rotating turn on the group, so we'll continue with this, please. According to the chairperson's mandates, Antti and Ollikainen will be acting as scrutinizers of the minutes. And on vote counting, Antti and Korrer. Is this okay? This is okay. Wonderful. The individuals are available, so choosing the listed individuals with listed substitutes. Closing item 4, moving on to item 5, approval of the meeting agenda. I've been given with an agenda in addition to the invitation to the meeting. And does anybody have anything to add to the invitation of the meeting approved agenda? We will approve. Move on to item 6, closing item 5, announcements. Opening the discussion on announcements. Speaker's not speaking to the microphone. Microphone is not working. New microphone.
Kiitos puheenjohtaja. Lammi.
Thank you, Chairperson.
Olen nyt
Greener
täällä
Aalto.
Mikkelissä.
I'm finally in Mikkeli. It's wonderful.
En omalla
I've waited for this for a long time. Not in my own chairpersonship term, I couldn't do this, so it's wonderful that we are here now.
Kiitos
Thank you.
että otitte meidät vastaan.
Thank you, Mikkeli, for accepting us and welcoming us.
Linnikko Mikael, Kylterirengas. Hieno töitä.
It's wonderful on part of the board and the Repco's board that we are in Mikkeli.
Mikkeli-ihmisiä on lämmin ja kiva ja uutta verta siellä hommissa.
That Mikkeli is great. So have fun with the individuals from Mikkeli. Thank you.
Kiitos näistä ilmoitusasioista, Vihalan ja Miikka.
Thank you for these.
Tulkitsen, että ei ole enempää ilmoitusasioita.
I interpret that there are no other announcements, so closing discussions.
Päätetään kohdan 6 käsittely, siirrytään kohtaan 7.
Closing item 6, moving on to item 7. So, preliminary debate on the update of the operations at the General Assembly of the National Union of University Students in Finland. Move on. The Repco has expressed a wish to update the stipulations on acting in the General Assembly or operating General Assembly.
Jes, nyt taitaa kuulua.
Now you can hear me. Hello. Bettina Barman, the AYYE Communications and Interaction and Advocacy Expert. It's wonderful to be in Mikkeli. Today I'll be presenting you with AYY's SYL regulation update. First off, we'll go through basics. What is SYL might be known to some. What is the SYL regulations? Then I'll be talking about advocacy needs that have risen, the process of operations, and then we can actually have a preliminary debate after that. Start with wonderful that worked wonderfully in my own PC, but obviously here not. So going from what SYL is. So what is SYL? Is the National Union of University Students, which is an umbrella organization for all student unions in Finland. We're all part of SYL.
Suomalaisten yliopisto-opiskelijoiden
SYL acts as an advocacy organization to higher education students in Finland and represents abroad. Some people might be more familiar with the advocacy work SYL does in terms of, for example, statements. All these things that SYL advocates are somewhere which AYY has a stance on, and student unions in Finland have a stance. This happens through general assemblies. And how is SYL visible to AYY and also for parties is through meetings, which happen in our everyday work, seminars, resources which we receive from SYL, and some large policies, for example, concerning the EU. This General Assembly that I mentioned, it is the largest decision-making organ in SYL, gathering all student unions to decide on what kind of student advocacy SYL will actually be driving forwards, deciding on budget, policy papers, regulations, all kinds of things. So similar documents to what AYY has, but these are on a national level. what can be mentioned is that AYY is a big operator in SYL because we are quite large. I think we are the second largest
Ja kuvassa tosiaan näkyy tämän vuoden
student
hallitus.
union. Here we have this year's board.
Edustusta.
We have AYY representation there as well.
Sitten se, että mikä on SYL-ohjesääntö.
Then what is the SYL regulation?
SYL-ohjesääntö on ohjaavan
So the SYL
dokumentti,
regulation is a guiding document
dokumentti, joka ohjaa AY:n toimintaa
that
menneisyydessä ja liittokokouksessa.
guides our actions in the General Assembly, before it, during it, and after it. Also defines how AYY will choose their delegation, the candidates, how do we operate as a delegation at the General Assembly, what we do afterwards. This has been approved by the Representative Council. So this offers a strong guidance. This is a public document. It's on our web pages. We have a lot of guiding text on how to operate, how things are handled, what are the processes like, how do we enter these processes. Why we are here discussing the topic is the fact that last year, I think before the REPCO, or was it previous REPCO or this REPCO, I wanted to know more about the activities, and our previous delegations have raised critique and development targets for this paper. We have also discussed this a lot at the office. It also been mentioned that this is a document which is being updated not very often. So 2012 and 2018, we've seen updates for this document. Some update needs that have been voiced as critique, what kind of changes have been warranted, include things like what is the hierarchy that the board will choose these SYL individuals, but the board will choose the delegations. We've thought about hopefully some more steering power towards the fact that the representative council would have its own organ of trust for this. And how do we actually choose our board? You know, as you might know, according to the regulation, the representative council power balance, basically representation divvies up the spots, and the board has 5 spots. This has caused discussion as well, and also discussions on how can the representative council return things to discussion, or so the presentation, how the delegation is presented, also the role division of the delegation. There needs to be a chairperson, secretary, policymaker. So should these be changed? Also on the decision-making power of the delegation, and how should this be done? So about this update process, the advocacy board committee has had a meeting about a month ago, out of which we will have this SYL regulation update. They have brought forth this need that should be brought up to the update process. We have the preliminary discussion, which is taking place today. Even though this is a preliminary debate, we are not making any decisions at this stage. Well, since it is preliminary, also the update will take place during this month at the office, during which we'll have discussions. We also keep the communication channels open to the REPCO. So this will be a few months for the update project, with the goal underlying be that in June we would have the SYL delegation applications open, which would mean that it would be very, very important that this would be approved in May.
Nyt tosiaan päästään tähän lähetekeskusteluosuuteen.
Now we're actually reaching the preliminary debate stage. Of course, you may ask more questions.
Minkä mä ehkä just kaivattaisiin niin toimiston puolelta teiltä.
I would actually want from you is what does the Repco wants to achieve? What do you feel that are more important? What could be changed? Is something outdated? Preliminary debate will take place. We'll reflect that, and then we'll do tasks at the central office and with the advocacy committee as well. Thank you.
Niin ja avaan aiheesta keskustelun ja otetaan sieltä ensiksi takarilta ilmeisesti alkohol.
Yes, opening discussion.
Kiitos puheenjohtaja. Netterimpiö ja alan kokous ja vaikuttamisen paljon.
The connection is very bad at the moment.
Käymään sitä keskustelua tästä asiakirjasta, kun ollaan Mikkeliin asti tultu.
Koska on ollut viime vuosina tilanteita, jossa
Recent years there have been situations where the proposals come from within the board, and it creates these kind of barriers for people who want to apply as delegates for those persons who are not members of the board. So it's more difficult for them. So I think this really needs an update. And I think there should be an external committee or selection group that would decide on the mandate. Thank you. There's a point of order. Technical note.
Lukelta viesti, että striimi putosi kokonaan. Jos saavutti jo Oaksin.
Yes, the stream was offline, but now it's actually online. Yes, the stream is back online now, so we can continue. Yes, from Vihreämpi Aalto. I will talk on behalf of my group. Believe that our group speech contributed to this discussion being organized. And I think it's very good that we are going through this issue, as there have been many different practices, but we have not always implemented them, so this has caused ambiguity when it comes, for example, to supplementing the delegation afterwards, and also when it comes to actual and deputy members for groups. When good points were made, and those are things that we should focus on. But also what we wanted to highlight is that it has been very common that the delegations also include AYYE employees. And we think it would be better if all delegates would be students. Of course, some years there have been challenges to form a full delegation. And there was questions of whether a single person could use multiple votes at the General Assembly, as some student unions already did in the previous General Assembly or in the seminar. Electing the sole candidate for the board is very important also for the discussion, and it's kind of problematic that the board selects this candidate. We should keep in mind that it may cause a lot of pressure to come there to speak at the interviews in front of 45 people. And the board members also are very much aware of what is going on in SYL at the moment. So I would like to hear a bit of a discussion whether the working group could include also members of the board of SYL.
Oli mainintaa tästä paikkajaosta ja siitä
Does it talk about this allocating seats, the delegation? Does this that the board appoints these seats, or how does it work?
Joo, eli lukuisistakin vinkkejä on tullut siitä, että kun siellä on tietyt tavallaan paikkaajat tehty just vaikka voimasuhteiden mukaan.
Let's talk about this dividing the seats according to power, these relations. And sometimes there have not been enough candidates. So then I raise questions of why a person has a seat from a group that they are not a member of. It may seem a bit peculiar. And to comment on these, having employees as member of the delegation, we have received feedback from our employees, and we will modify the practices to start this kind of this delegation application process already at the start of summer, so that we won't be in a situation where we don't have enough people in the delegation. Yes, thank you. Also, from a historical point of view, Representative Parkkinen kind of said what I wanted to say, but we will now interpret the guidelines very much to the letter if there are some kind of unclarity or ambiguity there. And when it comes to these employees as members of the delegation, usually that has been because that there haven't been enough people in our delegation if we don't also include employees. So I hope that now when we open up this document, that we would have more discussion about whether all members need to have a personal deputy in the delegation. Or would it be that there wouldn't be that many deputies?
Jos joku esimerkiksi lähtee vessaan. Tällä hetkellä se ei ole meidän käytäntöjen mukaan mahdollista.
Because now it's not really possible to hand over your votes when you go to the bathroom, for example. And there's a suggestion of using one person using more than one vote, and that is true, that can be done. One delegate can use 2 votes, a maximum of 2 votes, if they have a proxy.
Yes, kiitos Vesinorma Aallon kokoomus. Mä ihan alkuun haluaisin kysyä, että kuinka moni täällä on ollut?
I'd like to ask, I'm from Aallon kokoomus. I'd like to ask how many of you have attended the SYL General Assembly before?
Se on hyvä. Sainko mä tuon edellisen kalvon, mä ajattelin kommentoida sitä läpi niin muutaman kohdan.
Could I get the previous slide? I have a few comments on that.
Eli tosiaan allekirjoitat ehdottomasti tuonne, että mun mielestä on todella ongelmallista se, että
It's very problematic that the board selects Aalto's candidates, AYYE's candidates, the board. There, for example, a situation where a person who was not officially selected as an AYYE delegate and they ended up being elected as the president. And what Vihreämpi Aalto said, that it may be stressful to hold a speech in front of 45 people. I'd like to encourage or move our representative council culture towards a direction that if a person is running as a candidate into a position where they have to present themselves in front of people and represent AYYE students, then really this doesn't hold water, this kind of saying that it's very stressful to speak in front of so many people. As a general request,
tästä nopeasti tulikin, että AYY äänestää yhtenä blokkina, niin tämähän...
to talk about AYYE voting as a single block, this does not always hold true, and it's not even always the end goal. I think that's also a discussion that we need to have. For example, who divides according to their groups, which may not always be a good thing, but we should also have a discussion on it. The goal is for AYYE to vote as a single block, then we need to do the background work and make sure that people actually adhere to these principles. Especially for those who have not been at the General Assembly before, there are certain these policies that we decide on among the delegation. Then if someone decides to have a vote on a certain issue and others know this, that, well, this person wants to vote even without doing the background work, I think it's very central to have this discussion of how we form our policies for the delegation. And AYYE can wield a lot of power, especially if we stand as a single front. From Aalto kokoomus, I'd like to ask, what is the size of AYYE's delegation? 17 regular members and 17 deputy members, so 34. I think the representing council should elect the candidate for the board instead of for the SYL board instead of the AYYE board selecting those candidates. It really distances representing council from their core work. It just means that the board decides on it and the representing council just approves it. And if no one wants from the delegation, no one wants to be a secretary who actually forms the policies, they don't have to do that. And now we have other representing council groups who have not yet had a say. I think now it's their turn.
Yes, vihreämpi Aalto. Eka lyhyt kommentti.
From vihreämpi Aalto, first a quick comment on the previous speech. When Kokoomus said that being interviewed in front of 45 people is not the best possible scenario. Of course, they need the kind of more practice for that. But when in a situation where there are so many people sitting at the interview table, it can be a very confusing situation. I forgot to mention one thing previously, which is that currently in the document talks about a negotiator within the delegation. There has been no negotiation when it comes to the board at SYL General Assembly for a few years now. And there's already talks about having a permanent decision for the non-negotiation. So maybe we will discuss that once again as well. Thank you. I'm from Vapaasti Vasemmalla. Related to this committee, one option could be the advocacy committee, actually, that already exists, that they would select the candidate. But maybe we should also have some kind of other section there. If some year we don't have the advocacy committee, that another body could do that instead then. Then about the deputy members, I think it has both pros and cons. The good thing is that people can go to the bathroom without losing their vote if the deputy is there, but it also affects the political power relations. If kind of changes, it changes according to who leaves and who enters the room, in which order. Then about this, I think it's very valuable that there are also board members in the delegation, AYYE board members, who are much more aware of all these issues and what's going on at SYL. They can work in a professional manner, but our system is quite exceptional because the board members are not necessarily responsible or connected to any representative council group. So this also affects the power relations between groups. I think an option could be where all delegation seats would be allocated to a certain representative council group. So this would also reflect and represent the power relations in the representative council. And that the groups could also add board members to the delegation as well. Any other request for floor?
Joo, ehkä taas sarjassamme historiaa, miten muualla tehdään.
From history and what has been done elsewhere, for interest's sake, when I look at AYYE, at these practices that we have, in many practices, we have this kind of representative democracy model. So if you choose a board and they make these decisions like this, SYL members, many other issues as well. These might be things that the RepCo might want to decide directly. And this is the correct time to have this discussion that do we want to change this. There's no technical ban on changing things. So like stated, that Ollikainen said about deputies, this is why it's done. It's not actually a trivial thing. I'm going to say there are opportunities there to change the balance of power. It's good to actually go through these things one by one.
Ehkä niin, että kaikki tietävät, että se on myös sellainen asia, mitä
But everybody knows that this is something that can be changed if you want to. Thank you, Mr. Ilmavirta. You can get the last request for the floor during the next speaker. Thank you. So thank you for the comments, especially those who have not yet opened your mouths. Actually, talk with your representatives in Voiva. And also, I like Ollikainen's idea of increasing Voiva's role to bring the voice of the representative council and democracy out. that we have the people who use representative power based on voting that we actually reflect that. So the work is ongoing and be in contact those who still have concerns, etc. No other requests for the floor, it seems.
Kiitos Ollikainen vapaasti vasemmalla. Haluaisin vielä ottaa kiinni.
Ollikainen vapaasti vasemmalla to the left. I'd like to focus on something that has been discussed. How does the delegation vote? How does it vote joint or not? Currently, the regulation states that if the delegation will not vote, they'll actually they will inform beforehand. I think this is good. So, but definitely, it's good that AYY will be a unified delegation to begin with. As lots of preparatory work takes place, proposals will be made when AYY has went as a delegation. Usually we go as a united front and support our own initiatives, but it's good that there's this opportunity that if you strongly disagree with something that you may voice your disagreement. Closing discussions and moving to decide that we place on record the taken discussion. That everybody seems to be happy with the discussion that took place. Decided. Closing item 7. Moving on to item 8, news from the central office. So, board member will be presenting news from the central office.
So this part will be in English.
This part will be in English.
Hi everyone, welcome to Vikkeli. It's nice to be here for the first time in a long time. And today I'm going to present the office news. Let's start off with the community side. As mentioned, we already have a new Twitter coordinator who's started recently working and will be here for a while. We're finalizing the ESPO cooperation agreement. Yes, that's better. Okay, we're also finalizing the ESPO cooperation agreement that will be soon signed. And as well, we have been having a busy time at the Museum of Student Life. So Aalto president has visited it. As well, there's coming a celebration of it on 21st of March. So welcome to join and celebrate. And despite of that, we also have a lot of events coming up. So if you're interested or you know that someone is interested, welcome them to all of these events. When it comes to the HR administration, so as mentioned, we have some personal change. Besides Oliver, we have another change when it comes to the property manager who's leaving AYY's, Hannes, and recruitment has been started and is on the way. And another kind of important point is that the executive director will go on the parental leave. So that will happen from 1st of April till end of August. And the way the work is now being divided is our development manager, Annika, will take the responsibilities when it comes to administrative and supervisory tasks. And our chair, Fanny, will be taking the lead in other matters that come up. And another news is that according to the latest interpretation by the Supreme Administrative Court, the Act on the Openness of Government Activities is widely applied to the activities of the student union. So what that means that AYY has received training related on this topic from the legal experts and how to proceed further. And that means that also the administration is preparing for an increase in requests for the information. And another topic that is, according to the Finnish government program, the study on automation membership will begin in the spring of 2024. Right now, there's no further information on the schedule, and in case of the question, Antti, until he goes on parental leave, and there, our manager for advocacy and communications, will take the lead in responding to these possible contacts. And another topic is the new Transparency Act Register Act that also applies to AYYE. So when AYYE is meeting certain politicians, we must report its advocacy work to the National Register. And we've also had steps of how to take it within the office. When it comes to the communications had their start day, and they were clarifying their goals and also recognizing what are the strengths and weaknesses when it comes to AYYE's communications. There has been graphic design for the events, more on the joint statement in the advocacy slide. We also managed to get an opinion piece published in the HS, and there will be more on the next slide. Besides that, we've been also planning the European Parliament elections and making communications related to that. We also had volunteer recruitment for kitchen training committee, and regarding the declarations, so Tempaus has been declared and also Vappo has been declared, so a lot of things happening this year. And if you have seen, we also had the board's introductions that finished in the beginning of March. So yeah, this is some of the photos from the previous weeks. And this is the statement that was published by our Victor Schaumann, our board member specializing in educational policy, regarding the register fee for extending the studies. And when it comes to the advocacy also had a start day, and in collaboration with HYYE, AAS, U, and TRE, we had a statement that was focusing on the proposed fees regarding the extension and also applying for the extension. And mentioned before, we had opinion piece released. We also had some more halibut recruitments happening and finalizing those. We also released some statements from the educational point of view and also from international point of view to the Ministry of Education and Culture. And we have also been active in doing the harassment contact trainings for our community. And besides that, we've been also meeting the university people. When it comes to the member services, we will have a new van that will be starting its job, I guess, in May. And the old van will be functioning until April 30th. And when it comes to pre-booking tours of the facilities, they will start in April, and timetables are in the TILA calendar and also on the AYYE website. And when we talk about also the studio and craft room, there has been a request for the access code, so that is now being in development. And when it comes to tatami hold and smökki, there have been more cleaning supplies introduced there. And when it comes to the board, we had quite a few activities happening both in February and March. So we had a board alumni event in February, and we also attending a tech student advocacy training in Tampere. And we had a mentoring kickoff day, and also from the photo you can see we had an honorary council meeting where we discussed kind of the vision and future of the student union from the optimistic point of view. And besides that, we've been representing in various annual balls, and now that the trainings of January and February are finally over, the boardies have been diving into the sector work, and we have also started kicking off our action plan project, so that has been started off. And as a note, today from the board it's only me and Sako present here because our board is on holiday. So if you have any questions, feel free to approach us afterwards. But this is the situation. And some of the topics that we discussed in the board was we appointed the chair of the committee for the editor-in-chiefs, as well as there have been a few applications that came in regarding the register of association and the granting money. We have also been finalizing the nominations for the student representatives, and we have approved the statements regarding the amendments of the government decrees on the fees charged by universities and universities of applied sciences. And besides that, we also joined a statement with other student unions for the fee for applying for a study right extension. And we have formed the kitchen training committee, and also we have now a delegation for the OLL, which is the Finnish Student Sports Federation General Assembly that is happening this week. And we have signed a letter regarding student trilingualism and brought it up in the management team last week. We were also introduced to to the Transparency Register at the AYYE, and we award a grant from the NISE Fund. And finally, we have been confirming the Continuity Committee and also the invitations to our annual ball that will take place in May 18th. And that was that for the office news. If you have any questions, yes, there are some.
Thank you, Mante. First, we'll have a couple points from Ilmavirta, and then we'll move on to questions.
Yes, on behalf of the central office, 1 point more actually regarding the student center. Maybe you might have heard that there had been a complaint about the zone. The good news being that we got know that the complaint has been struck down last month, but we actually continue that they have applied for a higher level to apply to maybe make the complaint there. So we'll keep you posted what it means. We'll see what it means.
Aloitetaan aiheesta keskustelua.
Opening discussions.
Otetaan Ollikainen, sitten Parkkinen, Aalto ja Jyterrengas. Ollikainen, ole hyvä.
Kiitos.
So, Ollikainen first speaker. Question in English.
What's the agenda?
Question being why the OLL assembly is at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, that was a good question. Usually it is in November. The reason for that is the updating the rules. So they just have to basically accepting the rules. That's why.
Kiitos Ollikainen. Parkkinen.
Yes, thanks Mante for the presentation.
Question in English.
They also mentioned that you had signed some sort of letter considering still operating in 3 languages. Could you maybe shortly iterate on that? What did it consider and maybe share what you stated? Yeah, so does this work? So this was more focused on the language.
And answer in English.
We were kind of backing up the idea that there should be, let's say, a harassment contact person who is available in a Swedish language, and that was also more regarding kind of practicalities that, let's say, Sweden is able to give and provide the documents for, let's say, Swedish speakers and English speakers on time as it does for the Finnish speakers. And sorry, one more for like it was also in collaboration with other student unions, where let's say there is a Swedish-speaking minorities and also English-speaking minorities.
Thank you. Next request. Nääri, Aalto Coalition. Regarding the highest administrative court complaint, now that you have taken this discussion under with legal specialists, what are issues in which or information which AYYE won't, like what is the information that AYYE won't hand over? And another question which the interpreter regrettably did not hear due to the stream quality. So the act on publicity, they're in the legislation, things that we don't hand out if you want to read them out, but mainly they are issues which have been deemed secret based on the legislation. And based on the legislation, that should be stated secret. For example, business secrets, items which have personal information or health statements of individuals. So these being the most important things. The large change here is that what is deemed secret, the grounds for secrecy needs to be based on legislation You need to state from the legislation that we will not hand this out based on this point in the law. How do we actually interpret the law? That's its own can of worms. Lots of court cases have been undertaken based on that. So in short, the biggest change being that in all activities, the law must be followed rather than that it will not be followed in the activities that we do based on the Section 2 of the Universities Act, choosing student representatives, which was actually the same interpretation that the first Court of First Appeal, or the court actually took to the Court of Appeal.
Toistaa mun kysymys jo.
The speaker is not speaking into a microphone, or at least I cannot hear, or the interpreter cannot hear the question, so just speaking far from the microphone. Closing the discussion. I propose that the Reps Council place on record the preliminary debate. Oh, no, actually, no. Excuse me. The latest news from the central office. So place on record. Closing item 8. Moving on to item 9. Appointment of members of the scholarship allocation committees. So the student union has a scholarship regulation which stipulates that the student union has 3 scholarships: exchange, community, and study. Microphone for the speaker. Hello. So let's have this in Finnish, but we have material in Finnish and English. Hello, everyone. Some faces are known to me, others are not. Again, I've been a specialist for 2.5 years. Interpreter can't really hear what they're saying. Microphone seems to not to be working or not working very well. Let's see. We have the annual scholarship opening of the scholarship committee, the information package pertaining to it. Let's try to keep it pretty concise that we can actually get downstairs and get down to business. So yes, the student union hands out scholarships according to the regulations. The regulations, if you want to read them, are found on the web pages under scholarships. Different kinds of regulations, English and Finnish, but mainly handed out 3 categories, which are the exchange, community, and study scholarships. And for this, handed out in the springs and falls, especially the exchange. And first steps have been undertaken. The board has decided to bring to the RepCo that we will choose the committee. It has its own scoring rules found on the web pages, but in short, the scholarship is handed out on merit, and the U is community points and O is study credits. So in the English is the B versus S. The committee is comprised of me, meaning the specialist, a board member, and addition 2 to 3 representative council members. Why is it 2 to 3? But I'll open that up later. So the task itself will have mainly solitary work, but 1 meeting. This has changed throughout the years. Idea being that we will evaluate the work that the individuals have done for the community. So what has happened throughout the years when I've been working on this is that we've had both AYY staff members, board members, and in addition to that, in 22 we decided to actually combine these committees from 3 to 1. The original regulation, you might have seen the texts in the minutes. It's 1.5 pages. Originally, we changed, taken 3 committees for exchange for the scholarship, but now we actually want 1 committee to handle all of this. In addition, in 2023, we did the community scoring was reforged, did more regulations, made it a lot easier. Then we also increased the size of the committee from 4 to 5. Instead of 2, we have 3 representative members. And why this was done is that the applications were quite a mess. They had 55 categories. Now we only have 10 categories, and it's more unified and more easy now. Other essential changes include the fact that could the audience be quiet? Good point. So since Otax is going down, we're going to Microsoft Forms, which might not always work the best, but currently they do work. And we have the 55 categories or 10 plus 1 categories now. It's more clear and concise. In addition, we have the guidance and evaluation to the applicants. The applicants will actually evaluate themselves. How many credits will they get? They will inform us what they've done, tell us their score, and tell us why they've gained the score. So it's our task to evaluate is this correct. Earlier it was possible to do kind of 10 things for 1 year, which kind of broke the system. You are in 4 association and then you do some reporting, etc. It will getting a lot of micro points. So with even a small effort, you can actually get quite a large scholarship. So we dropped this capacity down to 3 based on historical knowledge and through the experts. It's actually to no one's benefit that you have more than 3 major tasks a year. Also the fact that if you're working, you won't get scores for this thing. For example, referencing myself, we want this to stay open and everybody has the opportunity to gain any number or the same amount of points to the same tasks. Next steps, first of which was undertaken that or decided to upload this to the repco, and then we should decide on who will actually be in the committee. 3 would be the ideal number. Next step being that the board will open the starting rounds for spring, do the advertisements, have the application rounds, then we meet with the committee process, get the result to the board, then we approve it. So quite simple, straightforward in this sense. Also, things to note here are the fact that please raise your hand when you're interested in this. Regrettably, the thing is that you have to evaluate the application's own applications. Most of they are in Finnish and it's text, so it's a lot easier that we would have individuals applying for this task who know both versed in Finnish, quite on a native level or on a fluid level. I don't know what the correct expression would be. We use about 1 to 10 hours in terms of work hours of reflective work or can be done remotely. So not a ton of meetings. So kind of lots of Google Sheet scorings. So as a side note, it would be actually prudent for the committee. We would have people of varying backgrounds, teekkari, kyltäri, and arts students, so we can actually get it to reflect everyone. Any questions?
Aloitetaan aiheesta keskustelua.
Thank you. Opening discussions. At this stage, it is an excellent point to ask questions.
Siellä on takana kyltärirengas.
There we have in the back row at least something.
Yes, Lucas Proarta. My question was about the 3 repco members that are chosen. Historically, do we vote for all of them separately, or do we choose them in repco? I'm just curious about how it's usually decided here.
It's usually who wants to get there.
Yeah.
So I expect a lot of volunteers. Or not too many, but 3 is max.
Gotcha.
Right, thanks for the question.
Kiitos teknisestä
Thank you.
puolesta. Eli yleensä
technical note. Usually,
eri stipendiluokkia.
the way we have done is we have these 3 different scholarship classes, and all have had the same members. So 3 names. Usually that has been enough that we've had just the exact number of candidates as we have the seats. But if there are more candidates than there are seats, then we will have a vote.
Mikäli on suuri yleisön yltäys, niin yritetään löytää 3 keskuudestamme ilman äänestystä.
So yes, I think preferable would be that we would try to find 3 members without having to vote. Yes, and a note, if you have the agenda open, the text is so long for this item is because there's reference to our scholarship regulations that stipulate these things. But yes, we only have had 1 working group, not 3 separate working groups, even though there are 3 committees. So that's why it looks a bit confusing, but we will do the official changes to the scholarship regulations this year regarding the members that we don't have to have separate working groups for each committee. Thank you. I'm from Aallon kokoomus. I propose Björkner as a candidate. Does anyone else have any proposals? Candidates to the working group? Kylttärirengas.
Niemi Kyltärirengas. Ehdotan Toni Niemi.
I propose Toni Niemi. Vihreä ja Aalto have any proposals, for example? Or from Arts? Do you have any candidates, pro arte people?
No, istuskelaanpas vielä hetki. Miettikää nimiä.
Well, we can wait. Still need one name.
Yes, pro arte.
Pro arte.
Yes, pro arte. Is it possible to discuss this with our group before we nominate someone?
Is it possible to discuss this with our group before we nominate someone? Can we have a discussion first? Yes. Let's have a 10-minute meeting break. So now you can negotiate among yourselves if you have a candidate. Yes. Starting meeting break at 6:30. We will continue with the meeting at 6:40. So in 10 minutes.
Kiitos.
Yes, it's now 6:40. We'll continue with the meeting.
Onko jollakin ryhmällä tullut esiin nimi, joka voisi esittää tähän?
The group have a name that they would like to propose.
Korpo.
Kiitos Korpoa ProArte ja
Thank you, Korpoa from ProArte. We don't have any names to propose actually, because all members of the Representative Council group
sitten raahataan kaikkiin mahdollisiin paikkoihin.
Because all of our active people are pretty much involved in other positions.
Vastaavaa luottamustoimea olemassa, joten semmoisia ei nyt löytynyt. Mutta
So we couldn't really find a person from among us, but I like to remind people that there are also people among the student union that can be consulted in issues related to arts. Thank you, Korpoa. Have Ilmavirta has something to say.
Kiitos.
Thank you.
Kolmatta ehdokasta tässä tapauksessa.
If there is no third candidate, then, or do we have one?
Määttä on käytettävissä.
Määttä is available, okay. Great. Now we have the three representative council members we need. We have 3 names, so we can close discussion on the topic. And move on to the motion. The representative council appoints members to allocation committees defined by the scholarship regulation. So one working group is responsible for all 3 scholarship allocation committees. These people are Niemi Määttä and the third name. So I see it, the representative council approves of this. This has been decided. Closing item 9, moving to item 10. Any other business? Opening discussion. Does anyone have any other business? Anything to add? Keep my mouth shut this time.
Ehkä nyt sitten, että ei jäisi aivan tyhjäksi tämäkin kokouskohta, sihteerillä olisi tylsää.
It would be very boring for me if there's nothing in this item, so I'd like to announce that I'm about to start my parental leave. So previously when you thought that maybe I'll ask Antti about this, for the next 5 months, please send those messages to Sakari or Annika. I'd like to thank the representative council on my behalf, and I'll see you in autumn once again. Any other business?
Forget it. Right after the meeting, there is an important.
This in English.
Okay.
Oh yes. Korpoa from ProArte. Wonderful to be here in Mikkeli. Thank you so much to the chairs of the representative council and the people at the office for making this happen. Hopefully this will become a tradition. Thank you. Thank you. Closing discussion. Closing item 10. Moving to item 11, closing the meeting. It's 6:45 p.m. I will now close the meeting. Thank you, everyone. Before we leave the room, let's have a photo together. After that, I'm moving over here. Our boss